What's up, everyone? Critter the Cryptid here. It actually feels quite a bit colder today, as you can tell. I got like quite a bit of layers. I got my thick flannel, I got a vest, and I got a beanie on. I also have bandana on under the beanie because it's just that cold today. But I wanted to give you a little show of my forest area and what I plan on doing and what I want it to look like that would make it healthy and capable of having a healthy fire. So to start, this tree right here, this one needs to be limbed, as you can see, because the grass is right there and these are hanging down pretty low. And then you go over to this Doug fir right here. Now, admittedly, this Doug fir isn't super close to like any other trees, but still, you see how close it is to the ground, how close it is to the tall grass. And, you know, until I get some kind of goats or something out here, I need to be able to mitigate the fire risk. Here's another one right here, another prime example. These branches are too low, they're too close to the grass. Then we have, unfortunately, the invasive mullein right there, which I can show you how destructive it can be to a landscape in a little bit. I'm going to finish showing you the forest, and then I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent about mullein and how destructive and invasive it is. Now, this part of my forest is actually really healthy. As you can see, there are no low-hanging branches. Despite how tall the grass may be, there's really nothing at risk here. I mean, like, there's a little bit of overcrowding over here. I have some Douglas fir perched right up next to my birch, which honestly, I'm probably going to fall the Douglas fir eventually because I have more of that than I do of birch. And I want to help the birch thrive. Like, there's some birch over here. It's mainly Doug fir and birch on this side of things with a little bit of ponderosa sprinkled in between. Here's another spot where mullein is. And again, mullein is super invasive. It doesn't belong here, but I will go show you how invasive and destructive it can be in just a minute, but I have to walk down the road to do that. So bear I go and do that. So this is a Douglas fir that has officially reached tall enough that it's prioritizing the crown because it's competing for sunlight. And these branches are taking way too much energy when it wants to focus up towards the sun. So all of these branches are dead. They're covered in lichen, which is a super flammable type of fungi. And as you can see, they go way down all the way to the ground. So if this fire, like if this grass were to spark and it was summertime and these branches were dry and not covered in ice, it would torch this whole tree because it would just keep climbing, which would then torch this Douglas fir, which is also experiencing dead lower branches, which would torch that Douglas fir. And all of a sudden we'd have a crown run. And all of a sudden every single top of my tree is on fire. So we need to come out here, or I need to come out here and I need to start clearing that up, which is why, like, even if I don't have a proper tool, I would rather take the challenge and come out here with just a single hatchet and clean it up and mitigate the fire risk, you know? But there's an aspect of my forest over there is actually pretty dense. That needs quite a bit of work done to it. And then on the other side over there is easily the worst of the density of the forest. So, but let me walk to the super destructive part of where the mullein is so I can show you. On my way to get to the mullein field that I wanted to show you guys. This is property that's actually right next to mine. As you can see, this is an unhealthy forest. It's too cluttered. There's so many low-hanging branches. There's a lot of dead branches. There's quite a bit of wood and stuff on the ground that's ready to ignite and just go off from there. So like on my property, that forest I showed you, it's less likely to go crown running, whereas this one, if it were to ignite, it has enough fuel, like right here, those lower branches and whatnot, it has enough fuel, as you can see, that if a fire were to come in through here, this whole tree would torch, and then it would start running into those trees. So this whole area would be ready to rip. The same with across the road over there. There's too many trees, it's too cluttered, there's too many low-hanging, like there's just too much ladder fuel going on. But unfortunately, not everyone is as fire conscious as others. Some people just own land out here and don't do anything with it. They never come out here. Unfortunately, for those of us who live out here, we need to be more on the fire-wise side. We need to be prepared to protect our property and our homes. Now, as much as I love my home, I also really want to protect the forest. I don't want it to be lost in a devastating fire that takes like 10 to 20 years for it to begin to recover, which is actually where I'm taking you to, is a burn scar that, from what I've gathered, happened about like 5 or 10 years ago. Well, less than that. About 5 to 10 years ago, actually, yeah. And unfortunately, because of that, the mullein was able to take over because it's more fast producing than the native plants. And while everything else is dead, it's full of mullein that nothing out here really eats. But I'll get more into that once I get to the mullein. But as I said, like, look at that. If a fire were to break out here, this whole thing would just ignite. It would go all the way up that tree. It would start running into those trees, and then we'd have a crown run. And that's no good. That's just fire all above you. And all of a sudden, this forest is gone. And with the destructive fire like that, it typically takes, like I said, 10 to 20 years to fully recover or even start showing progress of recovery. There's healthy fires and then there's unhealthy fires. We're almost to the burn scar at this point. But as I was saying, as you can see, so someone cut that tree, which they probably needed to because it's up against the road. But they fell it, they didn't limb it, they didn't buck it, they just left it there. So it died, and now it's nothing but ladder fuel for all of those trees. So if they're like, if someone were to drive through here during the summertime when all the grass is dry, and they were to like flick out a cigarette butt, or they were to cause a spark or something because they're dragging a chain on the gravel road and it goes into that grass, this whole area would absolutely rip. It would be destroyed. It would just be obliterated. It would be nothing but a burn scar, not viable for 10 to 20 years. But with that being said, fun fact, that's actually a tactic that lumber companies use. That sorry, this is actually a long walk. But anyways, yeah, that's a tactic that lumber companies use back in the areas where they would harvest old growth, but they were forced to leave quite a bit of it behind. They were told that if they replanted stuff, they'd be good to go. But the number one profitable thing for people is harvesting burn scars, is harvesting or salvage harvesting old growth trees. So what they would do is they would plant a bunch of pine, scrub oak, or whatever around them, very flammable ladder fuel type trees, and then they would leave them to be overgrowth. They would leave them to look like this. That way, if and when it burned, because the area we're in, it's not an if, it's when it burns, they would be tall enough by then to also take out the old growth trees, which would allow them to do salvage harvesting. And that's the most profitable form of business for them. So we're still losing old growth forests due to mismanagement practices because lumber companies know that, and they intentionally plant things that grow fast and burn hot. And they produce a lot of ladder fuel. That's why they refuse to go out and they don't clean anything up afterwards. And they just let it grow and become chaotic. And yeah, that's enough of that. My next TED Talk is about to be the Mullen that I'm coming up on right now. I didn't actually make it to the burn area yet, to the burn scar, but this is as good a spot as any to show you. This is all mullein. All of this is mullein, and as you can see, some of it gets pretty tall, and it will act like a ladder fuel into those reprod trees, to those younger trees, which will then be able to torch the taller trees, which is not good. But like, look at this. This is all mullein. It's super invasive. It's super destructive. Nothing out here eats it. In fact, in its own native land, which is Eurasia, the only two things that really feed on mullein is the mullein weevil and the mullein moth. Like, no other mammals eat it, especially out here. But even in its native land, no mammals eat it. Goats don't even like it. Not saying a lot, because goats will eat almost anything. But like, deer and elk might nibble on the greens out of desperation. But like, look at this. That's all mullein. It just keeps going. And so in this area, mullein is like a class C noxious weed, a very invasive weed, but it's not like, for some reason, it's not high on the priority list. But like, as you can see, some of it gets pretty tall. I'll even show you. I'll come stand next to this one. Look at that. That's taller than me. That's crazy. And like, each pod carries like hundreds to thousands of seeds, and the seeds are viable in the ground for up to 100 years. But nothing out here eats them. They don't get destroyed, and then they dry up, and then they die. And what's terrible is you can't even harvest them right now. Like, you can't even pull them up because you'll just be spreading seeds all over the place. So the best time to harvest it is during like early to late spring, before they start to seed and whatnot, before they dry out during summer, which causes them to start seeding. But yeah, let me get you to the burn scar so I can show you what an unhealthy burn looks like and what happens when invasives are in the area and a burn comes through. What's up, y'all? So as you can see, I'm actively in the burn scar, and I'm currently surrounded by mullein. This, like, all of this is mullein. This is all super invasive. It's super destructive. And this is what an unhealthy fire looks like. As you can see, the only thing that really grew in here is the invasive mullein. Everything over there is completely torched. All of this is torched. All of this is torched. This is what an unhealthy fire looks like. This is what happens when you don't properly manage your forest, or when you don't properly manage your land. Is a spark takes place and all of a sudden everything is gone and it isn't viable for 10 to 20 years, except for invasives that literally nothing feeds on other than the invasive Mullen weevil and the Mullen moth, which unfortunately do worse at surviving out here than the Mullen does. So there's literally nothing out here to properly control them. And unfortunately, the most effective way of removing them is pulling them out by hand, which, as I said earlier, if I were to try to pull this out right now, it would disperse hundreds, especially at this length, probably thousands of seeds. So it is a Class C noxious weed, especially out here. It needs to be removed. There are a lot of people who argue for the medicinal benefits of Mullen, but as you can see, there's so much of it. You would have a lifetime supply by the time you're done pulling it out. So you might as well just pull it out whenever you get the chance. And if you really want to use it for medicinal purposes, go right ahead. Go for it, do it, whatever. But don't let it do this. Don't let it take over the land where nothing can feed out here, because deer, elk, nothing out here eats this, not even rabbits, because they don't like the texture of the greens and it offers zero nutritional benefit. But I mean, like, there's actually a lot of uses. So like, you don't just have to pull them up and kill them. Stalks like this, if you were to pull them up when they're still, before they go into the seed stage, and you dip them in like beeswax or something, they work great as candles and they burn for a very long time. The leaves have good respiratory treatments. Like if you're having a congestion or cough, you can smoke it, you can drink it, you can steam it. It doesn't matter. They're very good for your lungs and whatnot. But there's also a bunch of other native plants that do the exact same thing and don't destroy the ecosystem around them. So that's kind of my TED talk for the Mullen. I walked about a mile to get here, but I will show you behind me. As you can see, that is all completely torched. It's completely non-viable out here. This is torched. Yeah, this is what an unhealthy bad fire looks like. And then the only thing that grew in is all this super invasive Mullen right here. So that's what I'm trying to prevent on my own property. And so once the spring comes, I will be outside combating Mullen very aggressively. Also on the other side of things, like, farmers should really be trying harder to get rid of it, especially if you free range your cows, because one, they'll track Mullen everywhere, but they also don't eat Mullen. Nothing eats Mullen. So it's very destructive. Nothing can benefit from it. And before there's any comments talking about the benefits of it, I just want to assure you all that nature is a collective, not a singular. So we should be working on making it better for everything and everybody. Also, I want y'all to know that I really put in the work to get down to that spot, because like, I walked a mile downhill. Now I got to walk a mile uphill because my property is actually on a very high peak. Oh, you're welcome. Feels like every time I move the camera, the smoke starts drifting to it. But either way, I appreciate y'all for following along. I'm going to go ahead and dispose of this pile right here. And I'm just going to go ahead and let this burn. And yeah, either way, please drop a comment. Make sure to like the video, share, and subscribe. Appreciate y'all for watching. Cryptid the Critter out.